Good evening. Oya Abota. Today we're going to talk about a very exciting topic. The documentary is currently ongoing and it's currently making a lot of waves about Ohe and Ile-Ife. A lot of questions were asked, so today I'm going to straighten those questions out. But before I do that, basically there's some issues that rised up quite some few hours ago on the Great Benin Descendant page as regards an argument where some persons said the Usamas are Oba's chiefs or Ugiso's chiefs, and I of the opinion said that the Usamans are not a High Oba in the real sense. So I want to reiterate such statement. The most important thing is there's no sentiment about history. There's no sentiment about history. History is events that have happened or that occurred in the past. There is no sugarcoating it. You have to say it the way it is in the real sense, and that's what Imasuen Izoduwa stands for explicitly. Without I don't care those whose hearts are God. We have to put our history in the true limelight. So I'm going to be reading from a book. It's the book that was dedicated to the Usama chiefs. It's written by the Imasuen of Benin, the Usama and the Benin monarchy. I think, can you see it? It's called, it's one of my collections of my work, Usama and the Benin monarchy. It was published 2 years ago by Chief Sami Ben, the Imasuen of Benin. And before this work was completed, I was very privileged to have had a series of conversations with him. So he brought the prototype of the book out, and we interacted our minds and we were able to come up. So we were discussing generally. It was through some of our conversations that it's one of the books that has enriched me in the past 2-3 years. A matter of fact, it's one of my favorite all-time Benin books because I saw myself being part of the creation stage of the book, and it was some of my inputs to Chief Sami Ben, the Imasuen of Benin, that eventually gave birth to this book, because John, he has a way of discussing some historical books, and I was like, Izoduwa, before I believed that Chief Izomo was not part of the John from the very beginning, but he had to give me succinct point. We argued and argued, and I had to see reasons why a part was correct and why I was wrong, and why other historians before him probably had said that Izomo was not part of the original 5 of them, that they were originally 4. So some of the issues cropped up today, and I want to put it very clearly. This is not about sentiment, about history. Alright? What I can assure you, the Usamans are not Oba of Benin's chief. In the first place, the reason is because it is very simple. The reason is because Obama Miyagi, the Oba, did not make them chief in the first place. The first chieftaincy title recorded in Benin history was the Imasuen of Benin. It was the first chieftaincy title that was created by any Oba, and these Ejones had existed hundreds of years, even before. That was my argument. The Ejon had existed long even before the Ogisoship started. In my documentary, when I was interviewed by Nebo TV, I had explained all these things succinctly. These people has been right from the very beginning of our history. It is through them that one of them emerged, who now became Ogiso Igodo. It was his grandson Ogiso that now created the councils of elders, in which he instituted these 5 of them into it, not as his chief, because in the first place he didn't create the title for them. They are instruments. They have become instruments of the entire stretch of our history, and we must get it very clear. This is not about sentiment. these are the same people that went through the ladder all through the reigns of all the Ogisos. They were there. They were the one who ensured that the present dynasty of the Oba of Benin continued, and we must give them that respect. All right, today these people might not really understand the power that they had in the eras, because I'm quite close to Chief Olia. I used to tell him that, what happened? You guys were so very powerful. If for the fact that the modern complexity of the kingdom no longer recognizes them as that very powerful, does not mean that history do not recognize them as that very powerful. They were very powerful, and they cannot be classified amongst the Oba's chiefs. Now, in the hierarchical order of when you have to give the breakdown of the Oba, all right, there are two classes of Oba: Onogbe, Onogbe is headed by Onwangwe, while Onohe is headed by the Iyase. You don't see these elders classified under these two classes of Oba's chiefs, because they are not. They are not. Do you know what a chief is? That Egenobama. That is why they are the only people outside the Enige, because Eniges are dukes, that has palaces, that has quarters. There is Oba's palace, there is Oba market, there is Olia's palace, there is Olia's market. If Olia wasn't that powerful in the past, he wouldn't have been wielding that power. You can't see Yase's market or Yase's palace. Amen. Yeah, amen. Palace. But rather, I don't want us to dwell so much on this. I wanted to reiterate it. I want to read something very specific from this work, so that people will understand that it is second. One of our brother, I respect him so much, but when we tend to disagree on society matters, I try to let him know that there are no sentiments about history, not because you feel that this is how it should be. It isn't like that. History are potent. Now, I'd like to read an excerpt very quickly. All right. The law of primogeniture. People should understand the law of primogeniture. I'm going to read from this book. Ogiso Oriagba had just been enthroned as the 23rd Ogiso of Igodomigodo, and would have been the last of the Ejonwe kings. He had seen the good and the bad aspects of the system as a member of the Royal Council Ogiso. He actually began this silent planning for a return to hereditary succession when he was still a member of the Royal Council. He ascended the throne of Ogiso, benefiting from the gerontocratic arrangement of the Royal Council, and was aware of the difficulties in the way of the required change. He was able with little effort to gain the cooperation of the Ejionisen. No one referred to them as chiefs or Ehaime, because at that time of history there were no Ehaime. Alright, he was able with little effort to gain the cooperation of the Ejionisen and the Ugoron members of the Royal Council, and few of the principal members of the Royal Council who were eligible in future to become Ogiso in their turn. That means in the old of the days of Ogiso, there were three types of cabinet members. We have to start divulging history. There were three cabinets of the palace members. First, the Ejionisen. There were 5 of them. Secondly, the Ugoron members. Obviously, this group is called Ugoron. This is where Ugorons were history keepers. They were the wisest people in the entire Benin Kingdom, or Igodomigodo land. They were the wisest. So they were the wisest people from Ishi's quarters that were assembled to be part of the cabinet members of the Ogiso's palace. All right. Now we have the Ejionisen, we have the Ugoron members, and the Royal Council of the royal council and few of the principal members of the royal council who were eligible. So that means the other aspects were those who will be eligible to become Ogiso in the future. These were the 3 cabinet members of the Ogiso's council. Alright, the Ejionisen, the Uwaran, and those who has the potential of becoming Ogisos in the future. These were the 3 categories of the cabinet members of the old. They were not chiefs. At the time of Ogisos, they were not chiefs. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and say, with the help of the overall members, he was able to secure the help of powerful individuals in the kingdom and powerful priests like Ohenso and community leaders. Strongest of all, he was able to enlist the cooperation of the priests of Eimidu. When Ogiso Reagba eventually summoned all the necessary and qualified people into the Ogbaha Council, he called on all the powers of their ancestors and especially on Eimidu, the progenitor of the Edo people, to stand by him as he took the decision. He, as a reigning Ogiso, then went on to promulgate the law of primogeniture, and all members of the royal council, including the concerned family members, the priests and the Ejionise, who were themselves involved in carrying out the instructions, including the nobles, collectively sworn before the shrine of Eimidu as follows. Now, this is where I want to read from. Now, I made a mistake earlier that it was 5. 6 laws during the days of Ogiso Reagba was promulgated. 6. We must understand the 6. Alright? The 6 laws were promulgated. Law number 1. Upon the passing on of the king, his elder son would succeed him on the throne. Alright, just like the edicts of the Shekiri in 1979. So this is our own. This is the first promulgated law. There are 2. One that was promulgated during the time of Ogiso Reagba, and the second one was promulgated during the time of Oba Ewakwe. But this was the very first law that was promulgated that guided our succession, or the laws of primogeniture. Now, number 1, upon the passing on of the king, his elder son would succeed him on the throne. Number 2, if he did not have a son to succeed him, the next of kin in the family would succeed him. Number 3, in the placement of the son or in the search for a next of kin for the placement, the Ejion would bear absolute responsibility. Now, during the time of the passing on of the Ogiso and the installation of the new Ogiso, the Ejion must be in charge of the kingdom. The Ejion, not Ehaime, not chiefs. Ejion, the others. We know that when you come of age, it becomes Ejion, but these Ejionisen had a specific rule. Alright, they had a specific role rather to play. Now, let me read law number 3. In the placement of the son or in the search for a next of kin for the placement, the Ejion would bear absolute responsibility. Now, number 4. Upon the death also of any member of the Ejion, the reigning king would invite his elder son, the next of kin, as the case may be, for installation into the position of the deceased Ejion. So we should get it very clearly. The law that binds the throne of the Oba of Benin is also binding on the Ejionship of these elders. I don't know what you understand. So the concept of, well, our brother was saying that when an Oliya dies, it is the Oba that makes Oliya. There is already a provision that every elder son of Oliya must be the next Oliya or the next of kin. The law has already provided it. I think when the family members are present to who becomes the next of Oliya, then the Oba or Ibaseyo. Likewise, it is still the same Ejion that has a right, that has the promulgated right of crowning who becomes the next Oba. The law provides it. Law number 5. Just as the Ejion would have the responsibility of maintaining the stability and continuity of kingship. Look, this is the most powerful. This law number 5. It said, just as the Ejion would have the responsibility of maintaining the stability and continuity of kingship, so would the king be expected and required to perform similar duties in respect of a departed Ejion member. It is, this law number 5 is so powerful. Listen, just as a John would have the responsibility of maintaining the stability and continuity of kingship, all right, so would the king be expected and required to perform similar duties. So the duty that these elders perform in ensuring the continuity of the king line is the same duty that is mandated upon the king. It's the same duty that is mandated upon the king to ensure that there is a continuity of the idiom. Now, the last law. The succession of the idiom, as in the case of succession of the king, is the responsibility of the king. Look at the last point. He said the succession of the idiom, as in the case of the succession of the king. So, the idiom role that they play to the king is the same role the king plays to the idiom. It's a 50-50. So that shows that these people, they are not ordinary chiefs and should not be denigrated to be classified as one. Yes, they are not seen as chiefs. Yes, they are not misrepresented as chiefs. Yes, they go to the palace, they have a function. These are all recent ideology. In real sense, these John that eventually now called Usamas, they will not go into the palace because they don't have a role to play in the palace other than some very, they were going to the palace, not like they were not going, but on a specific role that they have to play for the kingdom. All right, they have to play for the kingdom. So let's not get all these things all twisted by using English to mix all these things up. Jones are simply Jones, and they are not classified as Oba's chiefs. The reason is very simple. They were not made, their title was never given to them by any king, whether Ogiso or by, look for any book whereby it was stated that Ogiso this created Olia as a title, or Ogiso that created Eo as a title, or Ogiso this created Edohen as a title, or Ogiso this created Izoduwa as a title. What you will hear is that at one point in the eras of this Oba, Ero used to be number 3, but when something happened, the Oba now promoted Izoduwa over Ero, but they were not, their titles were never created, never, by anybody. Were never created by anybody known to history. From the very beginning of our history, we should learn, these lines of nobles should be learned to be distinguished from the chiefs. They are not to be classified as chiefs because they are level high past chiefs. That's what I'm saying. They themselves doesn't know now. Yes, that's like a hand, like Tesma, like they were there, they ensured. That is why it was practically impossible for a foreigner to have been a king of Benin. Practically impossible, because they had one law, they had one mandate: ensure the continuity of the kingship. That's the law they had. And that was why when there was a vacuum of kingship for 70 years, they had to ensure that they have to travel, they have to look for the blue blood. They have to ensure that only the blue blood sits on the throne. That was why it was impossible for Evian and Ogiamie to sit on the throne, because they ensured, they sworn an oath with their life that they must ensure only those, they ensure that only those who are of Oba, who are of the kingship line, can sit on the throne. It was a very simple assignment, and that is why they had to send a delegation. That is why the Olia himself had to lead. That's why Olia himself had to lead the other councils of elders to look for the rightful owner of the throne. I've said it, that while I so believe that there is no amount of guessing, it has nothing because of what I read. It is the experience I've had with understanding the complexity of our kingship convinced me beyond every reasonable doubt that Kaladera has to be Oduduwa. The reason is very simple. The reason is very simple. Because of these nobles, because of these Ejon, they had only one job: ensure that there is a continuity of the royal line. That is why when the men were trying to wrangle their way to the throne, they did not allow that. Instead, they had to travel to as far back Ife to retrieve their son, to come back and be the Oba of Benin. All right.